The Stack. People, Business, Technology. With Dan Tomaszewski of Everything MSP.
Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here with Everything MSP. Welcome to another episode of The Stack, where we focus on people, business, and technology. So today we are diving into a topic that every MSP deals with, but not everyone has mastered it, and that's data migrations. Because on the surface, migrations seem pretty straightforward, but in reality, they can turn into time-consuming, stressful, and I mean they can be very, very stressful projects that impact your team, your client experience, and ultimately the bottom line. So the question becomes, how do you actually do them better? Now, joining me today, I've got Ramiro Millan from Movebot. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. It's great to have you here. And, as we were chatting about just a moment ago, we were chatting about the great weather, cold, warm, 'tis the season in the spring.
Oh, yeah. Yep. You can't put all the clothes away. You got to keep some jackets on and some long sweatshirts, sweatpants, because
exactly.
It just fluctuates.
The good old dress in layers type scenario. So
yeah. Yep. Yes. We had I didn't get a chance to tell you, but we had a frost a couple of days ago. Like, we're in panic because we have garden beds, so we're just like in panic trying to make sure that we don't kill anything. So
yeah.
Good old spring in New England.
Exactly. Gotta love it. It's great to have you here on the show. I really appreciate it. And, we're going to kind of jump in, when you think about MSPs, how they think about migrations, most of the tools that they've used feel, I think some of the terms that MSPs have said is, they're outdated, they're slow, and, and frankly, they can become a bit risky. And, you guys have taken a different approach with Movebot, building a modern SaaS-based platform from the ground up, that's essentially fast, responsive, and scalable. And, I want to have you talk to me about that. What makes that approach that you guys did different from what MSPs are used to?
Yeah, so it started with Michael's vision. I think he's been on the show several times, which is we really wanted to make it easy for our customers, in this case, MSPs, to be able to migrate data. And easy means you can purchase easy. You should be able to deploy easy. We don't want to overcomplicate. We don't want to hide things behind a demo or a conversation. So we just really, from the get-go, wanted to make this product easy to use. So that was the mission. From the executable, SaaS was the way to do it. That way we can kind of deploy fast, scale quickly. And as we tell customers, and as I've said to you before, not to sound salesy, but there's really no project that's too small for us. We get projects all the time. People just want to move a few gigs. Not a problem, right? We can do that, right? And it starts at 75 cents a gig. But we also have other products for people moving petabytes. I mean, just this past week, I closed a customer of ours who's working at MSP who's actually migrating 4 petabytes of data for another customer. I mean, that's big boy numbers, right? Those are big numbers.
Yeah.
So we could not do that if we did not have a flexible, scalable, easy to use platform. And it works. We're servicing thousands of MSPs all over the world, a big core here in North America with us, but we are servicing MSPs all over the world. Every day we get 5, 6, maybe 10 MSPs who sign up. So it shows you that this product is really good. And then the thing, though, that I personally, one of the reasons why I joined this company was we don't actually store data. We're just a conduit between 2 points, right? And from a security standpoint, that's huge. If you're transferring 4 petabytes of data, that isn't happening overnight. I mean, if we could, that'd be a whole different thing, right? But it isn't happening overnight. It's going to take a very long time, right? So the way that Movebot handles that and its technology, it doesn't really store the data so that nobody can really mess with it, right? You don't want that from a security standpoint. No one's really sitting in the middle looking at it. Or a lot of other tools will do that. And it's, as long as you're running the latest versions and those tools are fine, but it just removes that little bit of security, like a little bit of fighting that may happen. The only downside of that is if you have to do a retry, it has to retry the entire file. We don't charge you for that. Just don't cost them the migration. That's the only slight downside, but the upside is huge. I mean, from a security standpoint, that is massive. So when you couple security, ease of use, scalability, it's a really good tool for our MSPs to use. And they love it. I mean, they simply do. They come back time and time again to use the product.
Well, one of the things that you just mentioned that I love is, no job is really too small. I mean, I think most MSPs are, they're dealing with, your average size, migrations, but sometimes they have a small project and, they don't want to have to, this one's too small for this vendor or this tool, so I got to go find something different. I mean, you really just want to work with one solution because that's how you become an expert and you can rock it out, right?
Yep, exactly. None of our customers, we don't shy away from anything that's too small for us. We make it even simple. If it's a small project, you have a pay as you go. So we don't charge you a month to month license to use it. You're literally only paying for the data you're transferring, which is great for MSPs, right? Because it's, it'd be awesome if all MSPs would just book solid, 80 hours a week and they just like do it on time. But lots of times that's not the case, right? Unless they're under a managed service contract. And even then, that's fine, right? Because they're only going to pay for that data that they're transferring, which is great. From the value perspective of that MSP, they don't have to buy subscriptions. They're not paying us just to kind of sit around and do nothing. It's not shelfware. They're only going to, as they use the data, they will do it. And then we provide some really good volume discounting on top of an MSP discount. So if you're moving a lot of data, we can really be competitive in the market. It's a scalable thing. It's just economies of scales. And that's how data works.
Yeah. That's awesome. And, one of the biggest frustrations that I do hear from MSPs is that, they don't find out that something went wrong until after the migration fails. And, and sometimes, they don't even, get a clear reason why. You guys have built several checks into the process that help prevent that. So for our audience, can you walk us through how that works and how it helps MSPs avoid those late night fire drills?
Oh, yeah. So in terms of the way that Movebot will transfer the data, let's just assume it's not a 4 petabyte job, right? So it's, maybe 50, 60 terabytes, right? It will do one big move, right? So it'll copy all the data as fast as possible. Then it does, well, first actually we do a scan to figure out what it's actually moving and kind of you come up with what's actually moving. This is super helpful, by the way, for our MSPs. If a customer, let's say they're using something like Box and they're moving from Box to something else. Box natively has like 100 different revisions that they can do. Do you need 100 revisions, right? Can you actually save a lot of space to that customer and pass that cost down by maybe moving only the last 10, right? So they can do that scan, figure that out, what they need to move from a versioning perspective. So once you figure that out, you transfer your data. It will then do a check to fix sure what is on one side versus the other, and then do the final check. And along the way, it's going to log and report that, and then provide you a report of what's failed, what successes, what retries. And the beauty is, you don't have to sit there and watch it. It'll continue to retry until it times out, essentially, or it runs out of retries, and then it'll provide that in the report. So it's very, very, very comprehensive and really hands-off, which is really nice, right? Because when you're moving that sort of data at scale, great if you want to sit around and watch it transfer, but you actually don't have to do that.
Yeah. And that's awesome. I mean, because again, there's nothing worse than, learning in the 11th hour that things went awry. And, especially when you are doing this project, after hours on a weekend, whatever the case may be, and the client has some expectation that this project is going to be done Monday morning and, and things went awry and so on. And of course, security, I want to talk a little bit about that. Because obviously that's a big one for, for all aspects of that. You've taken a strong stance here, especially as you mentioned about not storing customer data. What does that mean in practice, and why should the MSPs really care about that?
Lots of reasons. The most important one is a lot of speed, right? If you're just a conduit, you're moving data from one point to the other. We can move terabytes per day, assuming a lot of conditions apply. For example, Google has a 750 gigabyte limit per day. Can't do nothing about that. That's written into the law of data migration. But we can move data fairly quickly, right? Faster than a lot of other tools. the other aspect of it is it's not sitting in a temporary database, right? Whether it's persistent or not, it's not sitting there, allowing for some bad actors to be in there. There's been, we hear in the headlines, unfortunately, and that's never happened to us. Knock on wood, and actually it won't because of our security. But what I'm saying is a lot of our competitors, that has happened to them, and that's just not a good thing to happen from a customer standpoint. And all credit to our different vendors out there. It's usually not their fault. It's usually because the customer's running outdated versions, right? And they're not working with MSPs to make sure that things are running correctly. So it puts that security on the forefront. We kind of removed that by not actually storing the data at any point. It's stored obviously in transit as moving from one spot to another, but once that payload's delivered, it just gets jettisoned and it's gone.
Okay. And when you talk to MSPs, about that functionality, what are some of the feedback that you get from them?
They love it because it removes lots of times a big security audit. So if they're bidding, if they have an RFP or a tender, you say in Europe, if they're bidding for a large contract and they have to deal with the security teams, then that sort of scales down that security audit where they don't have to provide a lot of information because it's them and also a third party that's coming in. Obviously, all our MSPs can access our trust center and look at all our security, but from their perspective, it makes their life just easier. And that's great. That's what we want. We want to make, our MSP's life easier.
And I know we talked a little bit about this, and I just want to hit on this point again, but I think it matters more than people realize. There are often that perception that tools like this are, geared just for the large, complex projects. I know you said that no project is too small. Just talk about that mindset and why it's important for MSPs of all sizes, because not just MSPs of all sizes, but projects of all sizes.
Mm-hmm. So there are different avenues, right? We may have a local small MSP. Maybe they have their own patch they work. Let's say they're in Michigan, as an example, right? And that's sort of where they work. But let's say that they were able to land a big contract and they really use Movebot. They love it. They're moving, maybe 20, 30 terabytes. They're doing some migrations from maybe Microsoft to Google, Google to Microsoft, or what have you. But if they were to land a big project, let's say they get, I don't know, the city of Detroit's archive data as a project they want to migrate from some server in a colo out to the cloud, right? That's going to be a large project. They can still use our tool, right? It's the same technology, and they can really scale that tool up. So they know, like you said earlier, they're experts in the tool. They're used to it. They're used to working with us from a contractual standpoint, right? Where they know exactly what they're paying for. They know what their discounts, their pricing. So it really makes it easier. They're also, all our MSP benefits. Obviously, you have pay as you go, and you also have subscription. If you have subscription, if you're just paying us on month to month, which I said, we don't do, but we can if you want to. You have unlimited data transfer. That's for the heavy use MSP that's really transferring a lot of data. We'll provide you discounts per gigabyte, terabyte. Our support responses are 6 hours, right? And usually way faster than that. We have a team that's cracked that knows this product in and out. They're on all the time available to help our customers, whether it's chat or they just really like to jump on the phone and kind of do a screen share. They don't like to do the back and forth of emails. But we also have premium support for MSPs, which get a response within an hour, right?
Okay.
You can support multiple team members. As I mentioned, if you're moving petabytes, that's not happening overnight. So you might have different team members coming in and out to transfer that data so that can all be managed. And really simple billing, right? So we can either, like I said, have a subscription where they're just using it constantly or for projects. So if you take all of that and put that together, it makes it for a really comprehensive tool for projects that are very small, to projects that are very big. It's just everything in between, right? It fits really well from that perspective.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
you're here, there, everywhere, right? I mean, you're probably on the road more than, you want to admit. And the beauty is you're talking to MSPs all the time.
All the time.
And what are you hearing from them? What are you hearing that's actually happening in MSP space? Whether it's related to migrations or just other things like operations and growth. What are they talking to you about?
So there is a lot of growth for the MSP space, centered around data migration, also centered around AI, where AI is not really there's an impact in what they do, but not really impacting their migration businesses. But what we are seeing a lot is we're seeing a lot of MSPs moving customers either from Google to Office, Office to Google, Box to something else. We're seeing a lot of that migration happening more than usual, where customers are either, moving from, maybe they have multiple instances of Google and Microsoft and kind of bringing everything together. Can't think of the word right now. Or the other aspect too that we see within the space from our MSPs is the modernization of technology, right? To me, it's funny, but not funny at the same time, where customers are still moving flat files at night, right? Through some sort of secure FTP process, or they're moving files, and all that process is still going on. That really has been modernized up until now. Now we're really seeing this kind of get pushed out, where these customers have to either send it secure, they have to have either what have you in order to be more modern, because potential bad actors, and the world is now moving forward, whether these like standard FTP servers or SFTP servers that are out there in the wild still exist, but they're being sort of phased out. And we see a lot of our MSPs really doing a lot of that work.
Let's zoom out a little bit, let's see. We're gonna call this Ramiro's, vision of the future. I just made this up. Where do you see the MSP space heading in the next 3 to 5 years, especially it relates to data cloud and how MSPs are delivering services?
Yeah, I see MSPs becoming more and more important and mission critical to businesses as businesses begin to really modernize. We keep hearing AI is going to revolutionize. No one's really quite sure what that means. I'm sure there's experts that really talk about it who want to, who really want to get their voice out. But for the customers that these MSPs are serving, there will be some change in their business model. A lot of that will involve running services in the cloud, right? Whether that is some custom-made AI application, whether that is just the way they store data, the way they modernize their systems. They will be very integral, and they'll have a lot of business getting these customers off of these true legacy applications and onto something that's more modern and future-proof. Because it is happening. It's happening all around us.
We know it's interesting that you mentioned about defining AI and defining what that really means is if you think about even just MSP, if you were to ask an MSP what is an MSP, you ask 5 MSPs what an MSP is, and you get 5 different answers, right?
You make it 6.
Yeah, exactly. And and if you think about like what is AI and what does AI mean, probably get 10 answers out of those 5 MSPs, right? So it is really interesting. One of the things that we were just talking about on a call last week is, my feeling is just do it, get out there, figure out, we are defining it. There may not be a true definition of what AI means to a small and medium-sized business today, but we are defining that. And as every MSP's opportunity, and we are in a beautiful state right now. We are an incredible opportunity because we are at that forefront. We are building it. And I love that.
Yeah, because MSPs are really shifting from the we fix your computer model, right? Whether the computer guys to productivity improvers, to risk managers in cybersecurity and compliance, right? When you think of something like HIPAA and SOC 2 and all these different things, right? And then enabling growth, right? A lot of these companies do not have, kidding aside, today I had a service on my house. This is the invoice that I got. It was written by pen and I paid him check, right? That will change. And I'm thinking about something like we could, with a simple application, you could make your life significantly easier than this, right? So they're enabling growth of all these smaller companies or mid-sized companies, whether it be in cloud, whether it be in automation, which is huge, right? Or artificial intelligence. That's coming and that's what they'll be doing. So they've moved from this, we fixed your computer model to this really we're security experts, productivity experts, and we're enabling your growth.
Yeah, it's exciting times.
Very exciting.
we lived through, the .com, era, and we are at that next big era that, we can help mold it and form it. And so, I guess as we work to close things out, I really appreciate all that you've offered us today. And I want to make sure that, for anybody listening, they want to check you guys out, maybe run a test migration, see how it works. What would you recommend that they should do next?
They definitely should go to movebot.io. We have a MSP page where they can register for an MSP. They can also book a partnership call to talk to me or one of our many folks that run our partner program. If you're interested, what we'll tell in all our MSPs today is go ahead, sign up as an MSP. Let us know you want to run a migration. We'll provide you some real test data, right? So we can give you some migration credits and maybe some migration credits for inboxes and really run a job and see it, see how it is. And our trial or this particular thing will be fully supported so that you can really, if you run into any hiccups or really want to learn more or there's a potential problem, you'll have access to our support engineers. Like I said, no job is too small for us. No job is too big for us. We really love our MSPs. We're servicing thousands. We'd love to service the hundreds of thousands, if not the millions, right? If they all exist out there. So we really believe in what we're doing and we stand behind it. So we are willing to give you the data to run a real project because we know we'll be successful with it.
Awesome. And you guys do have the free trial and some special discounts for the Everything MSP community, which we greatly
Absolutely.
appreciate.
Yep.
And
all MSPs get a discount. And then, like I said, you have access to me, which is, maybe worth something, maybe not. And you have access to many other folks as well, really talented people at Movebot that really know the space well. So,
awesome.
We look forward to working with you more, or if we haven't worked with them, we'd love to bring them into the Movebot family.
Awesome. Ramiro, I greatly appreciate it. I appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for everybody listening, thank you for being here. Until next time, we will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to The Stack.